Welcome to Botcasters, the podcast dedicated to bringing you the latest news, insights, and expert opinions on conversational AI, chatbots, voicebots, and the future of innovation in this field. We are proud to announce that we are working together with the European Chatbot Conference in Edinburgh, and we will be interviewing interesting speakers. We want to provide independent and objective knowledge for our community, share real-world successes and failures, and connect people with the expertise that they need. It has been a great and fun journey so far. A big shout out to all the experts that were on Botcasters and shared their expertise and vision. Be sure to subscribe to the Botcasters podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and follow us on social media. Hope to talk to you at the European Chatbot Conference in Edinburgh. See you soon. Welcome, Ali Fenwick.
Doran, nice to meet you. Great to be here.
Nice to meet you too. Ali, please introduce yourself.
Yes, so my name is Dr. Ali Fenwick. I'm a professor of organizational behavior and innovation at Holt International Business School. I specialize in the behavioral foundations of organizations and of technology as well. I also run a center of research for behavioral science, applied behavioral science and technology. And I've been doing a lot of work in the last couple of years in understanding how we can use behavioral science, basically saying applied psychology to improve the way we design technology, specifically artificial intelligence, but also more importantly, how do we actually use technology in a way that augments our skills and makes us better as humans instead of hurts us in the process. And that made you quiet.
This is very interesting. Now, you did. And I'm going to make you quiet for a second. Now, you have a very long title of your workshop in Edinburgh. It is Humanizing Generative AI. I have to read this. It's too long. Humanizing Generative AI using a behavioral lens to bring humans and machines closer together. Now, I understand what you do at the university as a professor, but what does this mean? And what are people going to learn when they come to this workshop?
Great show. Look, I'm doing the workshop the day before on the 12th, and then on the 13th, I'm doing the keynote, and that's the title for the keynote. But they're interlinked together.
This is the title of the keynote.
Yeah, that's the title of the keynote. So basically, this whole humanizing AI concept that I've been working on for the last couple of years is a way to help people to understand, how should we be using technology? How should we be using AI in the workplace? AI has become such a buzzword for a lot of companies nowadays. They think, you can just go and, AI, just go and buy it and implement it and it's going to work. It doesn't work that way. What's really fascinating about companies that actually implement AI and chatbots and other kind of AI technology is that 20% of companies that actually have implemented AI into the workplace actually are capturing value. So that means they're actually making money out of it. So what are the other 80% doing? It's not working, they're failing, they're upset about it. And fundamentally, one of the main reasons why it's not working for them is because they're only thinking about productivity, efficiency, and cost cutting, and not thinking about the human component when thinking about implementing and using AI in the workplace. So generally speaking, that is the topic that I'm going to address from a wide perspective. And I guess in the workshop, I'm going to help people to think about, hey, now I believe in humanizing AI. So let me just address one misconception, because when we think about chatbots and humanizing chatbots, we're thinking, we're going to make a chatbot sound much more like a human. And that's not what I mean. With humanizing AI, I mean, how do we use a chatbot that helps us to improve our abilities to, make us smarter in that perspective, but also we use technology in a way that doesn't hurt us, because there's too many examples of how technology in the workplace can actually hurt us and not help us to be better. So basically, what I'll be doing in the workshop is I'll help people to understand how to humanize AI, all the way from the actual design of the AI and pulling it all the way through to using it in the organization, and all the way through to the strategy level as a leader. How do we need to strategize this moving forward? So that will be the workshop. And of course, in the keynote, I'll go much more deeper into the discussion of why humanizing AI is important.
I have two questions about the strategizing of the AI. What I see and hear, I talked to quite a few CEOs, they have literally no idea how to strategize and budget, by the way. AI in the boardroom, and they all think, oh, we invest, but we can also at the same time save a lot of money in an organization, kick out people, or make departments smaller. And I try to tell them, no. You will be spending a lot of money before you can save anything.
Exactly.
And it takes time to get at a level where you can actually save money. And it's sort of, you need to debunk a myth that AI is like the hammer to fix all nails, and it's not.
It's not. It's definitely not.
It's the same idea. It's like everybody says we need a chatbot with AI. Some problems or some conversations are actually better with a structured chatbot. It's easy, it's safe, and it always works.
Exactly.
And there's no surprises.
No.
And somehow it's not sexy, so they won't do it. And it needs to be strategized properly.
Yeah.
So how do you, if you talk to a CEO or to a boardroom, how do you get them to strategize this properly?
Beautiful question. And so I also work with a team of co-authors that I write with, but we also do business together. And when we speak to leaders in the organization and provide them that kind of strategic perspective about artificial intelligence, first we have to demystify what it is, right? Because most CEOs think, oh, wait a minute, it's AI, you can do everything with it, implement it. No, you need to have a good data foundation. You need to clean your data. You have to have quality data before you can do anything with your data, right? To make any kind of predictions with that. So fundamentally, we give them that perspective and help them to realize that there's much more effort that actually has to go into it. But I think the added value that we bring onto the table here is that we help them to understand the long-term perspective of AI usage. Like you're saying, a lot of CEOs today was like, wait a minute, how much money can I save? What's the business case? Right? Yeah, sure. Productivity and efficiency is really important. If that's your measure of value creation, then value creation will be very short-lived, because over time, everyone else will do it. Everyone will compete at that same level. And then you'll have to make very difficult decisions about what you're going to do in your organization, because again, replace people, take people out. And that's the big fear that a lot of people have. But I think we also need to look a little bit more broader than just only cost reduction. If we can help organizations to rethink the value and the impact that AI can have on, let's say, the human component, on employees in the organization, that's when we start to have really interesting conversations. I'll give you two examples. First of all, when we implement AI and we say, wait a minute, look, this AI is going to, for doctors, for example, it's going to do the diagnosis for you. Wait a minute, a doctor has trained himself or herself for 30 years, maybe 20 years, to become great at diagnosing and treating people. And all of a sudden an AI comes in. What do you think the impact will be on the professional identity of a doctor? And so I think a lot of CEOs don't think about the psychological impact that that's going to have on the individual, their self-worth. And so that's something they just completely do not think about. And then on the long-term perspective, because often now, this thinking about implementing AI is very short-term, profit-orientated. But if you invest in humans and you say, well, we're going to augment your skills, we're going to find a way to integrate you or teams with AI into the future. And we're going to embed AI in such a way that it's going to facilitate you. It's going to understand you. Invest more in kind of like putting the human at the center when thinking about AI implementation and adoption. Those companies that do that are much more successful. But it really depends on the organizational values and also being able to kind of convince them of that story. And that's where that humanizing AI comes in. And when you tell them that story, they go back and they think, okay, well, we still need to improve our productivity and efficiency, and that's the main reason why we want to use it. But if we care about our people, how do we take that consideration into our decisions today, so that whatever decisions we make today are going to have long-lasting impacts, and that we don't only have that short-term vision. So I think that's one of the things that we discuss with a lot of leaders, which they find extremely important, because the moment that you bring the human component into the discussion is the moment that they forget about the cost cutting. It's fascinating. The moment you bring that discussion forward, the whole conversation and the mindset changes for the majority of CEOs, not all of them.
You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Are you still there?
Okay. Okay. It's interesting because I gave a lecture for a convention of neurologists, and they asked me to to take them out of their comfort zone, talking about
Right.
AI and the impact on what they're doing. So I with the doctor in charge, neurologist in charge, he gave me 5 patient cases, not names, of course, but it was no personal data except for the medical data, and I pretended to be a consumer, a patient, and put all that data into ChatGPT and ask some smart questions, and ask for, of course, for differential diagnosis in a certain way. But even an average consumer could do that. And I showed the results on the screen. And then I asked the doctor who gave me the cases, can you tell me which ones were correct? He says, well, in 4 of the 5 cases, one of the differential diagnoses was actually the correct diagnosis.
Yeah.
I said, but then again, there were 4, there were in the differential diagnosis, there were other diagnoses. So like, this is what a patient is going to do.
Yeah.
So then one of the neurologists puts up her finger and she asks, it's like, does that mean I'm going to be obsolete? I said, well, you're not going to be obsolete, but you're only going to be obsolete if you do not understand how to deal with AI.
True.
And understand how patients are going to use it, because you give them access to all the results, testing results.
Right.
They are damn well going to use it in the artificial intelligence and come to you. And if you don't have the proper answers or you don't know how to guide them, you're screwed. And the patient is screwed as well. So it's going to cost you more time, not less time. So if you want to be more productive and help patients better, you need to find a way to work with AI and help your patients or guide your patients with that. So you need to take the lead as neurologists or any other profession. And be in charge and not following. Interestingly enough.
I think that's
sure.
No, sorry, I just wanted to add something there because I think you said something very interesting. It is the neurologist's responsibility to start evolving and using new technologies. I think the older neurologists are going to have a much more difficult time adjusting to the technology. The younger, not so much. But let me add something too there. It's the organizations, well, I think within the medical field, because they're now seeing how technology can augment their skills, right? It can be their co-pilot in that perspective. I think from the industry perspective of medicine, that kind of mindset of co-piloting is very much there. You see that in radiology, you see that in surgery. So by default, it becomes like the de facto standard of thinking about it. However, not every industry thinks that way. And so if an organization comes in and says, okay, well, hey, here's AI, we have to take into consideration that a lot of people are fearful of AI. And I'll give you an interesting statistic. Around 70 to 72% of the reasons why people are fearful of AI is because of 2 major reasons: awareness and lack of skills. And then there's another interesting reason we can come into a little bit later that has nothing to do with losing their jobs. It actually has to do with the fact that our cinema, interesting enough, in the West promotes AI as something that destroys humanity. Think of Terminator, think of Megan, and all those other movies, or even Frankenstein from the 1800s that, we create AI, it's going to destroy us. You look at the East, in Asia, for example, in Japan, AI has always been positioned that saves lives, protects life. And that's why their adoption within society has been much more willing to work with AI or robots than we in the West. But that's just a whole small little thing that I wanted to mention about fear that I think is very interesting. But the key point here, coming back and connecting this back to the CEOs, is, and one thing that I always say, and I said this at the conference last time, I said, if you do not start thinking about humanizing AI today, if you don't think about humanizing AI today and putting humans at the center of your decision-making and everything that you do with AI and not leaving anyone behind, I predict within the next 5 to 6 years, similar to what we've seen in diversity and inclusion in organizations today or sustainability initiatives, your customers won't buy from you anymore and your employees won't work for you anymore. Because why? Because you're using AI that's going to hurt me. You're not using AI that's going to help me flourish.
That is, it's interesting because you're hearing a lot of people say, well, you're not going to lose your job if you know how to work with the technology or let it assist you. If you don't know how to work with the technology, you will be replaced by someone who does. So there is a certain group of people that if they do not get the chance to educate themselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
or don't do that themselves, because those are two sides of the coin. I mean, the employer
Right.
needs to help them,
Right.
but you need to do something yourself as well.
True. And that's where
Then you're at risk. But
yeah, sorry about that. I just wanted to mention, bringing back, that's where the psychological layer comes in, right? That's where the psychological layer comes in. Because if
okay,
you don't realize that implementing AI and, replacing someone's skills has an impact on their own professional identity, of course you're going to get resistance. Of course you're going to get fear. So as an organization, you don't need to think about, here's the AI, here's the tool. No, here's the AI, and this is what the impact is going to be on your human dignity. And then this is how we're going to strategically think how we can mold you together. That's where the HR department comes in and molds you together and says, okay, we know that this is what you're going to be replaced or augmented with, but let's think about how we can still enhance you feeling like you're a doctor or like you're an accountant or a lawyer while using the AI. And I think that psychological component, most people, most organizations don't think about. It's just technology implementation and that's it.
It's interesting, because the thing I said to that neurologist that stood up, like, am I going to lose my job? I said, if you know how to use it, it'll actually make you a better doctor, because you will have, it'll cost you less brain power to look at different options, and maybe options you wouldn't have thought of in the beginning of the process of diagnosis. And save maybe the patient a lot of testing and get to the right diagnosis sooner. It saves lives, it improves lives, and the patient's going to be happy with you because you're a better doctor because of it. And then all of a sudden you saw the eyes of the lady. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. And that sort of was an epiphany.
Yeah.
Understanding I need to do something. So the guy in charge also said, we need to start educating themselves.
Yeah.
But here's the problem with regulations. That if you start using it in a certain way, it all of a sudden becomes a medical device. And then you get to deal with a lot of
regulations,
the regulations, authorities, etc. So then it becomes complicated. I think there's with regard to AI, there's in the different fields, there's a lot of regulations and safeguards. That's good, but it also limits innovation, the speed of innovation, and that's a pity, because I think especially in the medical field, it could save lives in an earlier stage. And there are countries, by the way, that are far more ahead of that. I wouldn't be surprised if Dubai is, because I saw Dubai is requesting 100,000 AI developers.
Well,
did I see that correctly? They have this program.
Well, I know they have. They've got this development program. Look, in Dubai, it's wonderful because this is what I love about Dubai compared to, let's say in the Netherlands, right, or the UK. I think things, go so slow in the European countries, and the UAE is when they've got a vision here, because you have to imagine they've created a whole mega city out of sand, right? So the sky's the limit for the people here, and I love that kind of. There's no barriers to innovation, and so they have a minister of AI that they took on board many years ago. Yeah, they've got a minister of happiness, but the minister of AI, and they've got a whole division that is dedicated to investing in AI, and they're one of the most advanced countries in the world in terms of how quickly they're implementing AI and experimenting with it. So it's fascinating. I don't know the exact numbers that you just mentioned right now, but yes, they're heavily, and also Saudi Arabia.
That was this golden
that as well. Golden visa. Yeah.
They have this program where they attract developers from the whole world, and with the golden visa story. And I said it's fiscally interesting, but but it caught my attention because it's like, if you attract this amount of developers, forget about the money and the taxation, but the powerhouse you're building. No, but it's for a country. This is beyond everything we can imagine, and there's no country that would be able to compete.
Well,
I think that
again, it's the look. I think from that perspective, it's very much the forward-looking perspective, right? The vision that a lot of people have here, and there's not a lot of debate, right? When something is going to be implemented, everyone just goes with it, and I think that forward-looking perspective is that hungerness, that eagerness to do things and be novel about things, I think is very much the culture here, right? And then I think that also facilitates that, because look at Europe. Let's be honest, Europe in many ways is lagging behind, let's say, compared to China, for example, in terms of their AI development. They're doing great stuff in terms of AI regulation and directives, which I think is fantastic. But at the same time, in terms of its competitiveness, I think in Europe we also need to up our game a little bit, and I think sometimes our culture sometimes holds us back. So it's always a fine balance, right? It's always a fine balance to find the right ways of making that work. But yeah, interesting observation.
Well, but the European way is more from a perspective of fear.
Yeah.
We look at everything that might go wrong.
Right.
If you look at it from opportunity and accept that, okay, some things might go wrong, we accept that. As long as no people die and there are no horrible things, okay, we accept that there might be things going wrong. But if we accept that and understand that, then it's not an issue, and it's a learning point. So, and that's a different way of looking at it. It's the same way in the US. If you fail and you have a startup and it doesn't work, venture capitalists see that as a great opportunity because you already made some mistakes and you learned, hopefully. In Europe, you failed. It's a different mentality.
Yeah. And
I think in the UAE, it's the same. It's like, okay, as long as you learn and you progress, it's good.
Right. Just try it. Exactly. Hey, I've got a question.
Yeah, making mistakes is part of that experience.
Absolutely. Doran, I have a question for you. And this is kind of me with my practitioner and my scientific hat on. What do you think, because you work in the field of chatbots, right, as well, and how do you see that AI impacts human life? Do you in a good way as well as a bad way? I'd love to get your perspective on that.
That's an interesting. In some way, it's a cat and mouse game. I'll give an example. If you, for instance, look at HR, right? This is in the corporate world. You see, and under the European AI Act, it's going to be different. But now you have a lot of HR software that filters with AI CVs and letters, and sort of pre-selects. Now we know there's an inherent bias. I don't know which bias, but there are biases in there. Sure. And nobody knows because nobody understands these algorithms.
Gender
so
bias,
that's one thing.
Racial bias,
whatever bias, but last name bias, country of birth, it could be anything, age. So that's one thing. But now we know there is software available, or even you could use, if you're prompted, right, ChatGPT or one of the other ones, and say, okay, here's the advertisement for the job description. This is the corporate culture of the company. Here's my CV. Here's my cover letter, or even write my cover letter and make sure it matches. And if you do that in the right way, you go straight through the system. You basically manipulate their system. You could be totally wrong for the job, but you go through the system and you get an appointment to talk. So you get systems to filter and then other systems to fuck those systems. And I see that as a cat and mouse game. It's a waste of time and money because people understand it's happening. I think if you're hiring people, you should talk to them yourselves. Don't have systems do that. Because the human in the loop is kind of important.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing what I see. In education, I see the same thing. Education in Europe is lacking behind. You probably agree with this.
So it depends on what you mean.
What I see is that let's take high school, for instance. They're teaching stuff you could look up, and they're examining stuff you look up. You have to learn it by heart. Makes no sense at all. If you have a good brain, it's not a good training for your brain. You just learn how to memorize. Right. But in this day and age with all this technology, memorizing shouldn't be the thing. Processing should be the thing. Now, we don't teach students to process. We teach students to memorize. And we don't even do that properly because they come out of school. They don't know how to do math, basic math. They don't know, they can't write properly anymore. So their language skills are bad. Now, we know that if you produce lousy text and you start using an LLM on that, you get garbage in, garbage out. Right. You don't get good output. So, so that is a problem. So I see all that technology leads to people losing certain skills.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with
So
you.
I think on the one hand, so my vision is we should learn kids and even grown-ups
Hmm.
basic skills, and you should
Yeah.
never stop learning basic skills. And at the same time, we should learn people to use those skills to apply them in the technology that advances. And that's also a continuous process. So it
Yeah.
shouldn't stop because technology advances.
Exactly.
Um, and somewhere there's a gap. And I think if we don't close that gap, there is a group of people that will be in trouble
Hmm.
and will have a hard time in the labor market, which the white collar labor market, to keep their job or to advance in their job, and they have a horrible career situation because it's going to be dull. It's not going to be fun. And I think if you work and you spend so much time at
Yeah.
work, it should be fun. You should enjoy it. You should
Right.
have the feeling that you matter, that you add value. And if you don't, I think it's actually a disaster for your well-being. So I think AI could help people improve. So be that better doctor or
Hmm.
be that better accountant because you get insights you would otherwise never have.
Yeah.
But we should also teach people to get there. And and you could use AI to do that actually.
Interesting.
And here's the point. So I think we should use AI for good, and of course also for better productivity, etc. But that
Right.
follows. It's
Right.
sort of automatic in the slipstream.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my. I hope that answers your
No, thank you.
question.
No, thank you. Thank you.
And
Because I mean, this is the question that I ask a lot of people, and this is the question that I investigate. And I think you're spot on when you say that, yes, there's technology there that can augment us. There's technology there that can help us, be more connected. And there's, again, the technology that we think initially it's good for us. It might actually even hurt us, right? And so it's really interesting that we put too much confidence in what LLMs today. And I want people to realize that these large language models they're basic, they're weak AI, they're narrow AI, right? And most people who don't know what that means, it just means it's very basic AI. It just does one thing, like roll the dice, operate the car, make the prediction. It's not intelligent. But because language models kind of predict the next word, and they do that so fluently, people actually start to believe that AI is smart, and then they think it's much more smarter than it actually is. It's not smart, it's fluent. But we're biased to believe that people who are fluent are actually smart. And so when we start to use the AI, especially large language models, to replace our writing, what we're not realizing is that our writing is our way to wisdom. Our writing is our way to improve thinking. Our writing is a way for critical thinking and compartmentalizing stuff for ourselves. And the moment that we give away that ability, it's like a muscle, right? We lose that muscle power. And then eventually we lose our ability to think more critically, therefore also be more susceptible to all kinds of influences by technology. And I think that's something that we need to be aware of, because eventually if we allow ourselves, and today we're even allowing ourselves to be manipulated by algorithms, and this is, again, only very basic and simple AI. Just imagine what would happen when the AI does become slightly more advanced, how well it could actually influence human behavior without us knowing about it. So I think there's a huge issue there, and that's why that's why I like to talk about and investigate this whole humanizing AI aspect, because those are the issues that I think we need to address. Technology often is created with a purpose motive. Great purpose, let's change the world, let's connect people. But then what happens? The profit motive takes over, and then investor metrics, outperform the well-being matrices, or the power motive takes over, and then bad things start to happen. And that's why we need to have ethics. We need to think about how we can use technology in a way and experiment. I like to experiment and say, hey, how can I use my chatbot to help me feel more connected? How can I use that chatbot to help me feel more empowered? That's another way of thinking about your chatbot. So when you design your chatbot, you're just not thinking about, hey, I'm designing my chatbot to give you the right answers. No, I'm here to give you a feel-good factor. I'm here to empower you. I'm here to give you these other human aspects that we don't actually think about when we actually think about the technology. So there's a lot to be done here in this space psychologically. Skills wise, enabling us, augmenting our skills, as you mentioned before, having that autopilot. And I think eventually over time, the people that you mentioned that we're leaving behind because they don't have the willpower, they don't have the interest and motivation to change themselves. How do we bring those people along on that journey? Because it's harsh to say, it's a reality check. Oh, you don't want to change, you won't change, so we'll leave you behind. But we still need to think about what do we do with people that don't have access or don't have the ability to learn about the technology. So there's many things that we can look into that humanizing AI space, but I really wanted to hear from you about, especially being a specialist in technology yourself, where you see, where the weaknesses are and where you think you could make it even stronger to help people.
There's an interesting thing here. You said, and this is looking ahead. If you look at AI, but if you already, if you look at society and government, local governments and general governments, the digital transformation a lot of the countries are making, and the impact that has on the older generations in those countries. These people feel already left behind.
Right.
Imagine if you add AI to that. It's a multiplier, and it's so big that we're completely going to lose that generation because they have no idea what's happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, I help my 82-year-old mother with everything online, and it's astonishing that it goes so fast. For us, it's okay. We didn't grow up with it, but we grew into it.
Grew into it. I love that.
Yeah. My kids grew up with it, so for them it's like, what are you talking about? It's no big deal. But for the older generation, it's beyond. They can't perceive what's happening. Yeah. And I think the same thing, what you just described, is going to happen with AI with a certain group. The people that if we leave them behind, they're going to be lost, and so lost that they're not going to be able to work, and that's bad for society as a whole. So I truly believe we should use AI for good and use the AI to educate these people, because we can do that. It's possible.
Sure.
Ali, if I could ask you one last question, if you could give a message to people or CEOs or people in companies thinking about starting with AI, what would be your message to them? It's like
the key
takeaway.
No, that's a great question. I think the key message here, again, just kind of focusing on putting the humans at the center of any decision that you make with artificial intelligence, is be smart about how you use AI. Not fluent, but smart, right? Be smart about it. And in the sense of thinking about the long-term implications of AI and how it might hurt you if you make the wrong decisions today. And as I mentioned earlier before, if you start to use AI that is, spying on employees or firing employees, and where that the AI is not human-centric or maybe even ethical for that matter of fact, it's going to hurt you. It's going to bite you back. So make the smart decisions. That's what I'd say. Make the smart decisions today, so that you can make sure that customers still want to buy from you, and that for your employees, you're still the company of choice. Because otherwise, people will go away. It will become a competitive advantage.
Thank you. And would then be an example, a bad example, of using AI for bad? A company that says that sort of films their employees, let's say in a coffee shop, a type of environment, and analyzes their efficiency in how they make coffee.
Sure, I think
I saw this passing on online as an example that they would use AI to do that. I'm like, if I would work at the company, I would quit.
Well, this is really interesting.
Not because I'm scared.
No. Your points are very valid. And so we look at this from a human-centric perspective, like you can't do that. However, it's being done, right? And there's certain parts of the world where those kind of AI applications within the workplace are being used, and you can't say anything about it. So in other words, it's going to come. And one of the reasons why I think it's going to come, in even countries where we think, no, we're not going to allow those kind of AIs to do that, and we have AI acts in place that are going to prevent that. But inevitably, and I've written a couple of papers about this, that if we see the evolution of AI in organizations, we see that we're now what I call the technocratic phase. The technocratic phase is where we just have a couple of user cases of how AI is being used in the organization. But where we're going into, or moving into, is more the integrated phase, where AI is more integrated between humans and teams and augmentation and co-pilots. We're going to see that much more flourish over time. But then the next phase, the next frontier, is the fully automated phase, where basically HR processes and all kinds of business processes are fully automated, and you'll only have a couple of people that are kind of taking care of the exception handling. And making sure that it's still ethical. It's going to be much more ethics and wisdom, philosophy driven, I think, more towards the future. But that means that managers, if you're thinking about cost cutting, it's not about you not being able to work with AI. AI is going to become the new manager, right? If you can supervise people, then AI is going to supervise you, and that means, are you efficient? Are you doing your job properly? And out of the kind of this out of the word of, oh, we just want to make our organization much more efficient and optimized and safer, we're going to use AI to kind of use it as surveillance in the organization, and then we have nothing to say. And so eventually, I like this analogy, and I'm going to tell you why this analogy is really funny, because it relates to back what you were saying about your kids growing up and you growing into it. It's going to be like that. We're going to be like, hey, you see your kids come by and you say, it's nice here in the water. And the kids look at each other as like, which water? Eventually we're looking at the water as thinking this is the AI, world of AI, but then the next generation comes in and takes it as second nature. We are supposed to be, observed and surveillanced by AI, because it will help us to make better decisions, and it will help us to be more we'll optimize ourselves, and we'll be happier and healthier, etc. But of course, under the auspicion of that, it also does other things to you. So I know that it sounds kind of scary that's, what would it be like to be, supervised by AI, but it's inevitable. And I think it's going to come. And I think a lot of us are going to have a hard time with, deciding how it's going to be done. But inevitably within the fully automated organization, it's going to be part of us, and we're just going to accept it. That's why today, when we talk about humanizing AI, let's make those decisions today, because when it becomes the fully automated organization, we know that that organization at least is going to work in the benefits of the employees and not against it.
And then we would love to be a customer there.
I would love to be an employee there.
Right?
Absolutely. There you go.
And an employee.
And an employee.
Thank you very much, Ali. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. And an employee. Ali, I thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. And hopefully see you in Edinburgh.
Absolutely. Doran, thank you so much.
Well, keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.